Mark, it's a heck of a lot of people off work.
Yeah, 39% of the rotated staff that should have been on that day. So normally, with 1,600 odd inmates in Wandsworth Prison, you would expect more than 200 prison staff. But as you said, 80 did not turn up for work on that particular day. However, we have heard from the Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk, in earlier statements he made about the escape of Daniel Khalif. He said it was not due to staff shortages, that there was a minimum safe level of staffing at the prison, that there were prison officers on duty in the prison kitchen, of course, where we knew or know that Daniel Khalif was working, that there were prison officers on duty in the gatehouse, where these vehicles leaving and entering the prison are supposed to be checked.
It's quite hard to claim that everything was all right when a bloke escaped.
Well, certainly in terms of the checks, it's clear that if checks did take place, they weren't checks that were credible and efficient enough to be able to see that someone was strapped to the underside of the lorry you were supposedly looking under. So there are some real questions to ask about that. But with regard to the staffing, we're told that it is not at all uncommon for there to be very significant absenteeism from that prison, with between 36 and 48% of staff missing on any given day. Now, we've heard from Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, the Shadow Justice Secretary, I should say. She has said, with regard to the fact that 80 members of staff didn't show up for work on that day, it is astonishing that almost 40% of the planned staff did not turn up to their shift on the day of the escape at HMP Wandsworth. This makes it clear that the dire conditions at the prison are having wide-ranging implications, including on staffing levels. So she's clear. She blames it actually on the fact that conditions within the prison system and within Wandsworth in particular are having a deleterious effect on the staff and causing them perhaps to be lacking in any motivation, or even worse than that, being ill or not in any mental state.
I can understand that to a point, but I mean, it's not a crash, is it? It is a prison, and we tend to put bad people in prison. But Mark, thank you very much. Mark White there, our Home and Security editor. As you were hearing a little bit earlier on, Sir Keir Starmer has unveiled his plan to tackle the Channel migrant crisis, pledging to set up special fast-track Nightingale courts to tackle asylum backlog applications and attempting to negotiate a deal with the EU in return for smashing the smuggling gangs. Now, it comes as the new GBNews People's poll found that 68% of Conservatives and 67% of Leavers think that immigration has made crime worse, as do nearly half of all voters, fuelling concerns about Britain's migration troubles. Look, Keir Starmer, I think, thought he might have cracked it. I think he went over to the European Union to try and grandstand a bit on the world stage. He's off to meet Macron, etc. And I can understand that. He wants to seem like somebody who can be, you know, a friend to all and, look, this is me on the world stage. Fine, that's the kind of thing that a leader would do. I get that. But if you do go there, really make sure that you are going to end up with a workable plan. You're not going to end up being mugged off by Brussels, and you're not going to alienate, dare I say it, pretty much everybody in the Red Wall, and maybe that's 68% of people as well, who actually want you to do something about illegal immigration. He is not distancing himself, I suspect, far enough from Tony Blair for a lot of people. Former Labour Minister for Europe, Dennis McShane, joins me now. Dennis, thank you very much.
As always, good afternoon.
Yes, good stuff.
I enjoyed your marvellous editorial. I agree with lots and lots of it. And I'm very glad you're one of the only presenters I've heard who's pointing out that the EU, in the sense of Brussels, is powerless in this because Germany and France, as you rightly said, have completely shut all access from any of the migrants arriving in Italy. So the idea that you can go to Brussels to solve a problem, even talk to Macron. Macron's not in this game.
So why is it... This is the point, right? Why has he done it, then? I mean, this is, I think, a massive political own goal.
Well, he's going to Canada to be with Liberals like Justin Trudeau next week. Macron invited him. He didn't ask for the meeting with Macron. Macron invited him because, and I tell you why, because Boris Johnson famously said when he became Prime Minister, donnez-nous un break to Macron, and then that nice young lady, what's she called, who was Prime Minister?
Liz Truss.
Ms. Truss.
Yeah.
She was asked, is Macron friend or foe? And she said, oh, the jury's out. Now, no British Prime Minister would ever have talked to General de Gaulle, or even President Chirac, even Nicolas Sarkozy like that. And I don't think we understand how much damage their behaviour. Mr. Sunak's, I think, trying gently to repair. This is simply Macron accepting an invitation.
Fine. No, I understand that, but nobody asked Keir Starmer to try to come up with a migrant policy that is possibly the worst of both worlds, that would see us taking a quota that would leave the European Union in charge of how many asylum seekers we essentially take, and not really do much to stop what's going on in the Channel. Go on, why is that not true?
Well, very simply, we won't even be there for... Well, I obviously want Labour to win. Sometime 2025, Macron is in charge. We don't know where we'll be. The European Union is going to elect a whole new leadership team, and everywhere...
No, but the plan... Yeah, I understand that we don't know where we're going to be in a few years' time, but the plan is to allow the European Union to dictate.
The reason that France and Germany are shutting the gates to the migrant workers is because Italy's immigrant or Home Secretary, Minister of the Interior there, a man called Matteo Salvini, actually at times makes Suella Braverman look like a liberal woke leader writer.
Well, with respect, Dennis, if 8,000 people arrived on your doorstep over the course of 2 days, I think you get a heck of a lot more right.
We would have the fits every way possible. And what nobody is saying is why are Libya and Syria failed states? Because the Conservatives intervened to destroy them.
I understand that, but much closer to home, what Keir Starmer has done now is open up a door that allows people to say, you actually would quite like us back in the European Union. That's not much of a shock. Well, I mean, he actively campaigned for it for a heck of a long time, so it is true, really, isn't it? But then you've also got red wall voters who, especially, lent the Tories their vote at the last time. If he'd kept his mouth shut, they probably would have voted for it this time round. But now they think, well, you're Mr. EU and you want a lot of asylum seekers.
Should we just wait gently until the election approaches on where red wall voters are? I think they are thoroughly disillusioned. They did give the Tories their vote, you're absolutely right. And they've got more immigrants than ever. They've got fewer good jobs. Their children are not being trained, no houses, blah, blah, blah. Now, what I think, I mean, the most interesting thing for me, in fact, the only interesting thing, I wasn't particularly excited by that story that we're going to be in discussions with the EU and taking migrant quotas. I mean, that, knowing the EU, that struck me as being just a flyer in one paper. I know the source of it, and other people were
Keir Starmer was talking about.
No, he's constantly said we need just a civilised relationship.
What has he gained out of this? What has Keir Starmer's...
Right,
what has he gained in the last day?
I think the country is pleased that he, particularly with his criminal prosecution background, is saying, we need new courts, we need a lot of new staff. That is what Suella Braverman hasn't replied. Now, I was on this wonderful show last week. I said, fire her and get a competent minister. You can't do it when all she's doing is preparing to run after the election.
It's interesting because
you've got to deal with the applications.
I get it, but I think a lot of people would rather have somebody in charge as Home Secretary who is willing to call what's going on in the Channel an invasion than somebody who wants to broker a deal with the European Union so that they could, in theory, tell us how many asylum seekers we have to take.
Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. You can call it anything you like. It has no impact. You need some action.
All right.
I'm not sure about all this business of a deal with the EU. I do know we need to deal with the backlog. Suella Braverman isn't Keir Starmer's proposed.
Well, I think that's the fear. Yeah, look, I get all of that. I think there's a fear, isn't there, that whether or not this turns out to be true, we'd have to wait and see as to whether or not Keir Starmer ultimately would end up just waving that backlog through. But that's a lot of whataboutery. Anyway, Dennis, thank you very, very much. Dennis McShane there, the former Labour Minister for Europe. Look, no matter which way you cut this up, it has exposed that there are divisions in the European Union, to say the least, and that there is a dysfunctional element to it. Again, would you really want to rejoin that? Let me know, gbviews@gbnews.com. But right now, we've got loads more on that story on our website, gbnews.com, the fastest-growing national news site in the country. All the best analysis, big opinion, and the latest breaking news. But I know that this has really got you going. It's been trending online, it's doing the rounds everywhere you look at the moment. Following a series of attacks, the Prime Minister has announced that the American XL bully dog is set to be banned by the end of the year. Is that fair? What does it mean for crossbreeds? Actually, is it the owner's fault? Patrick Christys, GB News, Britain's News Channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It is 3:24. You're watching and listening to me, Patrick Christys, on GB News, on your radio, television or online. Still to come, an exclusive GB News People's poll has revealed that 62% of those surveyed think crime in the UK is increasing. So, do we need tougher sentences for shoplifters? And as some pupils face a 21-day isolation period if they catch measles, should we be forcing children to get the jab? Has all that COVID vaccine hoo-ha and some of the very real issues that took place there been preventing people from getting other jabs? Where are you on that? We'll have a chat. But the American XL bully dog will be banned by the end of the year following a series of attacks, Rishi Sunak has said. This was the Prime Minister's announcement a little earlier today.
Today I have tasked ministers to bring together police and experts to firstly define the breed of dog behind these attacks with a view to then outlawing it. It is not currently a breed defined in law, so this vital first step must happen fast. We will then ban the breed under the Dangerous Dogs Act, and new laws will be in place by the end of the year. These dogs are dangerous. I want to reassure the public that we will take all necessary steps to keep people safe.
Massive debate here. Very much two sides of it. I mean, this, of course, comes after a 30-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of being in charge of dogs dangerously out of control, causing injury. And he's been further arrested on suspicion of manslaughter, actually, after a man died following an attack in Stonell yesterday. What does this mean for crossbreeds of XL bullies, etc.? Is it actually the dog's fault? You know, is this a real thing? Are there other dogs out there that are doing attacks a little bit like this? I couldn't help but note that I was doing some research before I came on that 6 of the 10, possibly now 11, fatal dog attacks within the last year apparently have been linked to XL bullies. So, you know, is there something in that? Is there something in that? I just don't really think I feel comfortable saying that any animal should be exterminated. That said, I do eat meat, so maybe I'm a hypocrite. But joining me now in the studio is contributing editor at Novara Media. It's Michael Walker. Michael, thank you very, very much. Now, crucially, for the purposes of this discussion, you own, is it an XL bully cross called Moose? Talk me through it.
Yeah, I've never actually quite understood the XL part. She's an American bully crossed with a Staffordshire Bull Terrier, which I co-own with an ex-partner of mine. You can see her there. Very sweet, very lovely. She's very upset she's going to be banned. I suppose the way you introduced your segment, should she be exterminated? Absolutely not. I am actually, though, in favour of banning the breeding of these dogs. I do think that American bullies were probably a mistake to sort of import into the UK, because I do think they are a bit more reactive than other dogs. And when you combine the strength of a bully with reactiveness, that does create some danger. Now, I mean, as you can see from that picture, she is not remotely aggressive to people. And we did struggle a bit sort of training her to be relaxed about dogs. She kind of is now. But yeah, I mean, I think the horrific scenes we've seen, or the horrific news we've had of people dying after attacks of these, does mean that something needs to change. But we also do need to make sure that this ban is done in a way which is sensitive to the bullies and their owners that already exist, is what I'd say.
I suppose the big question mark, and we are yet to find out exactly, is what this means for crossbreeds like your dog now. Will they be banned because they've got a bit of American bully in them? Will they have to spend their lives on a leash with a muzzle? I mean, we can see the dog there playing very happily with other dogs. It would be a shame, I think, if Moose was shackled to your side 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of would crossbreeds be banned? So I was looking through, obviously I'm very interested in this now, so I was looking through what the initial legislation which they're planning to include bullies in, which is the Dangerous Dogs Act. Now, what happened then was it was those breeds and crossbreeds, and there was a grandfather clause, which meant that if you owned one of those dogs that was born before the law came into force, you could go and get them registered, which means they wouldn't be put down. But as you say, they would have to be on a leash and in a muzzle for the rest of their lives. Now, I suppose the difficulty here is that the last time this happened, so with the pit bull, it was designed by how they look. You know, there aren't genetic records for most dogs. We don't have genetic records for our dog. She was rehomed, so we definitely don't have genetic records for him. But or her, sorry. So it will be difficult to see how this is defined. And I suppose I worry also with the leash and the muzzle thing is that, as anyone with a young dog, I think with an older dog, it doesn't matter so much, but with a young dog, they do need to expend quite a lot of energy. So if they are always on a leash, then obviously they can never run faster than their owner. And that could mean that you've got these reactive dogs that are even more pent up than they were before.
Just very quickly, one last one with you. From a political side of things, do you think the Rishi Sunak's rights get involved in this?
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, I'm a bit annoyed that he's only just got involved now, because, you know, as a owner of a dog which is crossed with a bully, I mean, my life would be a lot easier if she was not crossed with a bully, if she was crossed with a staffy instead, for example, right? So I do think we are in a very problematic political situation whereby we have allowed American bullies to proliferate, and now we're banning them, right? Which not only has meant that some people have unnecessarily died because they've been mauled by them, but you've now got potentially tens of thousands of people who are in this incredibly difficult situation where they've got a dog that they've fallen in love with, it's part of the family, and now they suddenly find that either it's going to be taken away or they've got to give it a very restrictive life for the next 12 years.
Yeah, well, Michael, look, good luck to you and Moose, who, you know, does seem like a lovely dog, and I think it is a shame. I suppose with anything that comes in, with any ban and anything, there will be people, or in this case dogs, that kind of fall through the cracks. And maybe, unfortunately, moose will be one of those, because it doesn't really seem like there's any issues there. Maybe it's for the greater good. Anyway, Michael, no doubt we'll talk about this again, and good luck. It's Michael Walker there, who is a contributing editor at Novara Media, indeed friend of the show as well. Look, I've got a poll running at the moment, which is on my Twitter, at Patrick Christys. 77% of you right now think we should ban XL bullies. If you think differently, we'll go and take part in the poll. Have your voice heard. But now, between now and 4 o'clock, an exclusive GB News People's poll has revealed 62% of those surveyed think crime in the UK is increasing. Do we need tougher sentences for shoplifters? But right now, it's your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. The top stories this hour. Sarah Sharif's family have been remanded in custody after being charged with the 10-year-old's murder. Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, and his partner and brother appeared in court today. They've also been charged with causing or allowing the death of a child. As you've been hearing, the Prime Minister says the American XL Bully dog will be banned in the UK by the end of the year. It comes after a man died following a dog attack in Staffordshire. A 30-year-old man has been arrested. And unions have vowed to fight the government after a £500 million investment in Tata Steel has put 3,000 jobs at risk. Tata has been in talks with the government to switch from coal to electric furnaces in an effort to reduce carbon emissions by around 1.5%. More on all those stories by heading to our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Looking at the markets, the pound will buy you $1.2416 and €1.1628. The price of gold, £1,554.09 an ounce. And the FTSE 100 is currently standing at 7,727 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McKibben here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Another warm day in the south, much cooler further north with some cloud and rain in places, predominantly across parts of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England because of a stationary warm front which really is continuing to bring a band of cloud and outbreaks of rain. The heaviest rain likely across the southern uplands, the far north of England, parts of southeast Northern Ireland. To the far north, Scotland, we're going to see showers and some clear spells overnight, turning quite chilly here. Much warmer further south and humid with the risk of thundery showers moving up across southwestern parts at times. 15 to 16 Celsius in the south first thing, but we have got some cloud about and those thundery showers across parts of Wales, south and southwest England continuing for a time. It does tend to brighten up for a while into the afternoon with some warm sunshine developing, and there'll be some sunny spells for the central and northern part of Scotland, Northern Ireland. Cooler here, but with also a few showers in the far north of Scotland. An area of cloud persists across southern Scotland, northern England, but the rain tending to fizzle out through the day. Then into Sunday, this plume of thundery rain pushes north across many parts of the UK. Hit and miss downpours, but where we see these thunderstorms, they could be fairly lively. Further thundery showers into Monday and Tuesday, turning cooler widely.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, it has kicked right off in the inbox about the XL Bully ban. I asked where you are on this. Carolyn's been on. It's the blooming humans who breed these poor dogs for fighting who are to blame for this predicament. They are the ones who should be banned. Whichever way you look at this, it ultimately is a human problem, OK? So it's a problem for humans that we have, you know, an oddly aggressive breed of massive dog out on the street that appears deeply content to rip the face off human beings, if indeed that really is the case. But actually, it's human beings who created these things to begin with. I mean, it is us to blame for the situation, and now, as a result, quite possibly some dogs will end up being exterminated or banned in future, so never even born, when they would have been all right. I'm also going to be talking about this. Patrick, this banning of the dog is rubbish. Oh, here we go, another one. Matthew, it's the owner that should be put down. That's strong, that, Matthew, I must say. I've owned 3 of them. Not once have any of mine attacked another dog or a person. Matthew, if you still have one, by the way, and you'd be willing to come on the show with it, then email back in and get in touch. One of the big ones, though, that I'm talking about now is about shoplifting, OK? Because we've done a GB News poll, and I want to just go to an email on this. GB News should start a campaign like Don't Kill Cash, but at this point called Don't Kill the High Street, which is about shoplifting. And if small crimes, says David, aren't dealt with, then it always escalates. And that's my point. It might seem like a small crime, shoplifting, but it's not really. For the shopkeeper involved, increased levels of violence being used, it's an absolute shocker. Why isn't more being done about it? But now for a GB News exclusive, it is indeed our very own crime poll. And it's revealed that 62% of people surveyed think crime is increasing. When asked how much confidence they have in the police to deal with crime in Britain, 60% of those surveyed said they either don't have much confidence or have no confidence at all. And when asked if the police should adopt a zero-tolerance approach to dealing with shoplifters by investigating every crime, 65% of people surveyed either completely agreed or somewhat agreed. Well, I can understand that. To be honest, I would have thought that maybe 100% of people would want 100% of crimes investigating, but maybe the other 35% there thought, well, how do we do it, really? We don't have enough police officers. That's always the tricky one, I suppose, isn't it? I don't think police officers don't necessarily want to swerve investigating crime. Maybe some of them do. But surely if we had more of them, then maybe we'll be able to investigate more of these quotes-unquote lower-level crimes like shoplifting. I'm joined now by former Met Police Officer Chris Hobbs. Chris, thank you very, very much. So, look, the majority of people feel like crime is now increasing and that the police should do more to stop it. When it comes to things like shoplifting, what more could be done, do you think?
It's very difficult because in the last year, and we've had this discussion before, people have said, or it's been said, police need to do more with domestic violence, sexual offences, rape, burglary, grooming gangs, stalking, harassment, human trafficking, missing persons, county lining, moped crime, hate crime, fraud, e-scooters, knife crime, mobile phone theft. Yeah. So the pressures are huge. I don't know if you
had drug use there, but we'll add that one in. Why not? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I live in the borough of Ealing, and when I was a PC, I policed part of the borough. Now, in those days, every shift we would field probably a minimum of 21 police vehicles. So we would answer just about every call that came in, including any shoplifting. Now, covering the London Borough of Ealing, there may be 5, 6, 7 vehicles.
Yeah.
In those days,
and loads more people as well, Chris. Sorry, but also and loads more people. I mean, the population has surged.
Absolutely, so. Absolutely. And then when we did arrest a shoplifter, we'd take them in, and we'd be in and out within the hour. And the commissioner the other day, he actually made a very good point. I was going to say for a change, but he made a very good point when he said in his day and my day, the case papers for a shoplifter or for an offence would be that.
Mm.
Now he extends his finger. Sorry, where am I?
I get the point. Yeah,
it's
there's
huge.
Loads more. Yeah.
It's huge. The Crown Prosecution Service, even when you take a case to them, sometimes even for attacking and injuring a police officer, will come back to the poor police officer and say, no, not in the public interest. No, not enough evidence. And really, they've been hit by cuts as well. So as far as police officers...
I would have thought, Chris, though, that I would have thought that is shoplifting not an open and shut case? We've got CCTV, they've got the possessions, they haven't got a receipt, there might be a witness. Bish, bash, bosh. That's it, isn't it? Easy fix.
Well, in the old days, yes, it used to be. It used to be. But these days, the Crown Prosecution Service, people's human rights, everything else... every shoplifter has to be interviewed. CCTV has to be gone through. Everything has to be absolutely watertight, and it takes hours. A shoplifter will take hours to process and hours to do the paperwork, and that is part of the problem we've got today.
So, look, without wanting to throw some of your former colleagues under the bus, etc., is what you're saying that realistically, when the call on the radio comes in and you've got 5 police cars around a borough and someone says someone's just nicked a chicken from Tesco's, realistically, it's not worth the officer's while because there's probably a stabbing taking place.
Yeah, if there's an officer to go to it in the first place. Remember all these officers you see on crime scenes, for example, with it. That did when I was a young PC. Mental health. Now, the Commissioner's hoping, isn't he, to say to the NHS, right, you deal with mental health call-outs. We'll have to see how that works.
Yeah.
But hours and hours of police time is spent with people having a mental health crisis. So it's a massive accumulation of problems. And then at the moment, of course, you've got, sadly, police morale absolutely falling through the floor, and there are retention problems and officers who lack experience. And it mounts up, really, Patrick, to a real policing crisis at the moment.
No, indeed. Look, Chris, thank you very much for your time, as always. Good luck to you. Have a nice weekend. It's Chris Hobbs there, who's a former Met police officer. I'm just going to reiterate a couple of things that are in that poll then, right? So we've got 62% of people thinking that crime is increasing. And I think that's fair enough. I mean, crime is increasing, so that's right. 60% of those surveyed said that they either don't have much confidence or have no confidence at all. And when asked if the police should adopt a zero-tolerance approach to dealing with shoplifters by investigating every crime, 65% of people surveyed either completely agreed or somewhat agreed. A zero-tolerance approach. Well, what does that mean, then, do you think? What does that really mean? Does that mean, look, we'll never let you off without, what, a prison sentence for shoplifting? I suppose that's the thing, isn't it? If you're going to say that shoplifting has to have a deterrent attached to it, does that have to include prison sentences? I've got to be honest with you, in Patrick Christys' Britain, which may well be quite a dark and bleak place, there would be a heck of a lot more prisons, and there would be a heck of a lot more people in them, and there would be a heck of a lot more police officers as well. Maybe that is just really the solution. Let me know, gbviews@gbnews.com. But still to come, unvaccinated children could face being forced to self-isolate for 21 days, not because of COVID here, don't start panicking, because of a rapid rise in measles cases. And it has sparked a vaccine debate. Should the measles jab be compulsory? Is it your duty as a parent to society to get your kid jabbed with the measles jab? Patrick Christys, GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back, everybody. You are watching and listening to me, Patrick Christys, on GB News, TV, online and radio. Now, unvaccinated children, I'm not talking about the COVID jab, don't go loopy, could be forced to self-isolate for 21 days because of a rapid rise in measles cases. Now, 2 London councils have warned parents amid a rapid rise in the disease. Health officials say the low uptake of MMR jabs has increased the risk of the potentially deadly infection. So, why is this happening? I suspect that people got vaccine fatigue or vaccine concern as a result maybe of what went on during the coronavirus pandemic. Are they now more sceptical of these things? Have they stopped their children taking them? Maybe that could be it. I don't know. But also, should it be mandatory? OK, should you be seen to have a duty to your child and the state and society to get your kid vaccinated against measles? Sunday Express Health and Social Affairs editor Lucy Johnson joins me now. Lucy, thank you very much. Can we deal with the why of it all first? Why have we suddenly got a rise in the number of people not getting their kids jabbed from MMR?
So there's various theories on this. One is that there was a downturn during the pandemic. People weren't getting out, they weren't going to the doctors, they weren't following up appointments, and the system, as you know, wasn't working. It was prioritising COVID. And secondly, there is evidence that people mandating or effectively mandating vaccines at that time. So if you weren't vaccinated, you were locked down for some periods, did increase scepticism, and it does increase uptake in the short term, but actually there's a bit of a backlash and people became more sceptical about vaccines in general, and that's been seen across the world. So there's different theories about that. I don't know how much research there is to back either of those theories, but that is what the thinking is.
Interesting this. Pam's been on. Thank you very much, Pam, for emailing me. She says, back in the dark ages of 1957, she says she caught measles and it's centred on her eyes, she says. Anyway, she's ended up, luckily, with just being short-sighted, apparently, but she goes on to list a few other horror stories here. She says, yes, the measles jab should be given. I don't know if she's stopping short there of it being mandatory. I mean, if we did, could we mandate the measles jab? Is there a case that society needs us to mandate the measles jab?
I don't think mandating is not what we do in this country. Of course, there is a benefit to some vaccines. They do reduce disease and death. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have vaccines, but to mandate them is another step. Firstly, with measles, you have what's called sterilising immunity. So if someone is vaccinated, then the chances of them getting measles and getting very ill from measles is very, very, very small. So it doesn't matter, you know, that's someone's choice. If they want to get vaccinated and they want to protect themselves from that, it doesn't matter what someone else is doing. Secondly, once you start mandating things, then people get angry, they get sceptical, you increase the idea that, you know, people are deliberately harming us with vaccines, that people have different religious beliefs, and not forgetting that all drugs, including vaccines, do carry risks, and there are harms, and the vaccine damage payment system that the government has given out payments for children who have died, sadly, very, very rare, or have been damaged by vaccines. So start mandating something that carries a risk is opening a can of worms, I think.
Let's just have a little look as to what's actually happening right now then. So pupils who have not had 2 doses of a jab that protects against measles risk being told to self-isolate for 3 weeks. This is according to at least a couple of councils. I would imagine this will be possibly a countrywide thing before you know it, really, the way things go these days. So, in a way, that is mandating, isn't it? Unless you're happy to look after your kid for 3 weeks at home, which potentially quite a few parents are not.
Well, it seems like a non-starter. It's a bit of a ludicrous policy. First of all, how do you police it? If you're sending your children home to self-isolate, how do you know they're not going to go out and go into the supermarket? What are you going to do? You're going to have policemen or wardens at their door. Secondly, when does it end? So they do 3 weeks of isolation and then they go back into the school. There's another child with measles. They're back home again. So it gets into this revolving door situation that we saw during COVID. We've already had a lot of lost education and lost learning during COVID, and a lot of mental health problems in children that have been linked to those lockdowns. So there is harm attached to that. And the third thing is, if the government really wanted to get serious about trying to persuade people to uptake these vaccines, then it could consider reintroducing the single jabs that were available until about, I think, 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
You could get single measles, single mumps and single rubella jabs on the NHS, and that you know, people preferred that, but that they're no longer available. So the art really in this is to persuade people and to persuade them why it would be useful, rather than trying to coerce people. I think because it doesn't work.
Exactly. I feel very uncomfortable about this. And again, I do think this is a knock-on effect from some of the stuff that happened during the pandemic, as you alluded to, which is that people felt pressured, people became increasingly sceptical of, you know, Big Pharma or the message that was being pushed. People didn't like being told what to do, and then you maybe end up with a situation a bit like this, where people are looking at a measles jab, the MMR, which was taken largely without that much pushback, certainly for the last few years, and then now they take the foot off the gas. Look, thank you very much, Sunday Express Health and Social Affairs editor Lizzie Johnson, on the old MMR jab. Do you think it's OK to mandate it? Should you get it? Let me know what you think. But, OK, I thought I'd finish the hour with something a little bit different. To China, where a search operation is ongoing after 70 crocodiles escaped from a farm during floods in the village in the south of the country. So it was reported that the animals escaped through 2 gaps in the enclosure walls, which collapsed during floods caused by heavy rain. Local authorities have organised a search operation and water-draining work. Now, according to the Dazhong Daily, it's a good paper, that. It's a good paper. It's a state-run national newspaper. A staff member, I struggle to wake up in the morning without my copy of the Dazhong Daily, but a staff member from the Emergency Bureau said it is currently under control. All right. But the number of crocodiles that escaped is a bit high. Yes, 70. 70 crocodiles. If you're in that village in China, so it's all under control, don't worry. Don't worry, there's crocodiles coming out everywhere. But anyway, come up. Will Starmer's EU deal cost him the next election? Has it already cost him the next election? That's what I want to know. Plus, we are raising a generation of disobedient children. Is it ever OK to slap your kid? Patrick Christys, GBNews, Britain's news channel.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McKibben here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Another warm day in the south, much cooler further north with some cloud and rain in places, predominantly across parts of southern Scotland Northern Ireland and Northern England because of a stationary warm front which really is continuing to bring a band of cloud and outbreaks of rain. The heaviest rain likely across the southern uplands, the far north of England, parts of southeast Northern Ireland. To the far north, Scotland, we're going to see showers and some clear spells overnight, turning quite chilly here. Much warmer further south and humid, with the risk of thundery showers moving up across southwestern parts at times. 15 to 16 Celsius in the south first thing, but we have got some cloud about and those thundery showers across parts of Wales, south and southwest England continuing for a time. It does tend to brighten up for a while into the afternoon with some warm sunshine developing, and there'll be some sunny spells for the central and northern part of Scotland, Northern Ireland. Cooler here, but with also a few showers in the far north of Scotland. An area of cloud persists across southern Scotland, northern England, but the rain tending to fizzle out through the day. Then into Sunday, this plume of thundery rain pushes north across many parts of the UK. Hit and miss downpours, but where we see these thunderstorms, they could be fairly lively. Further thundery showers into Monday and Tuesday, turning cooler widely.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys, it's 4 p.m, it's GB News. And has Keir Starmer already cost himself the next general election with his bizarre EU migrant plan that never was? They've slapped him down. We'll be having a big debate on that. I'm also going to be talking about this as well. This is another deeply controversial topic. Exterminate XL bullies, ban XL bullies. Is it the owner's fault? Is it the dog's fault? Rishi Sunak's wading in. Is it even really any of his business? What do you think about all of this? Very mixed views in the inbox so far. I will also be chatting about this story as well. Is gay conversion therapy okay? So they were going to ban it, they've delayed banning it, but there's another aspect to it as well, which is about trans children. Could it actually be criminal to dare to suggest that your 13-year-old who's saying they were born in the wrong body might actually just need a bit of therapy? Yeah, you don't really want to criminalise that kind of stuff, do you? That's the role of parents, isn't it? Finally, will AI kill us all? That's what I want to know. Elon Musk has said that AI poses a threat to civilization. I certainly am concerned it poses a threat to my job because you could get a robot to do this much cheaply. Patrick Christys, GB News. We'll never be able to recreate this chaotic energy. GBviews at gbnews.com is that inbox. Has Keir Starmer already cost himself the next general election with that EU migrant madness? And look, it's got to be the XL bullies, hasn't it? Are we right to ban them? Get your emails coming in right now, though. It's your headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. The top story this hour, the man killed in a dog attack in Staffordshire has been named by police. 52-year-old Ian Price died in hospital after being seriously injured in Stonnell, near Walsall, around 3:15 yesterday afternoon. He had been attacked by 2 dogs. A 30-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of being in charge of dogs dangerously out of control and causing injury. It's believed both dogs were American XL bullies. The Prime Minister says the breed will be banned in the UK by the end of the year. Labour also supports the proposed ban.
The first step is to convene a group of experts in the field and the police to define the breed, and then using the powers under the existing Dangerous Dogs Act, we will then be able to ban the breed and laws will be in place by the end of the year. But it's clear from the attacks we've seen, tragic incidences, that we do need to take action to protect the public and stop these attacks, and that's what we're going to do.
3 members of Sarah Sharif's family, meanwhile, have been remanded in custody after being charged with the 10-year-old's murder. Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, and his partner and his brother appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court today. They've also been charged with causing or allowing the death of a child. Sarah was found dead at her home in Woking in Surrey after officers were called from Pakistan by her father on the 10th of August. Unions have vowed to fight the government tooth and nail after a £500 million investment in Tata Steel has put 3,000 jobs at risk. The government says, however, it will support more than 12,000 jobs in the sector overall. Tata has been in talks with the government to switch from coal-fired to electric furnaces in an effort to reduce carbon emissions by around 1.5%. Business and Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch says the government is saving the industry.
This is good for the taxpayer, this is good for the workforce, because actually when we do have new electric arc furnaces, we're going to be able to have many more industries. We can have offshore wind, there'll be a whole redevelopment of the site. This is actually a great deal, not just for Port Talbot, but for the UK. And what I would say to people who are concerned about job losses is that we do understand, and we have a transition plan in place that's funded up to about £100 million to make sure that people have skills to retrain.
But the Shadow Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, says the government is twisting the narrative.
I think only this Conservative government could spend £500 million making thousands of people redundant. I was at Port Talbot yesterday. I was talking to the workforce. Of course they support green steel. Of course they want to see this transition take place, but they were promised they'd be a part of it. They were promised they'd be consulted on the plans for the future. And fundamentally, this should be a story about more jobs. There are huge opportunities for green steel in the UK, and the way that this has been presented to them obviously has them worried.
Train drivers are to strike at the end of this month in their long-running dispute over pay. The ASLEF union says its members at 16 train operators will walk out on the 30th of September and the 4th of October. The action will coincide with the Conservative Party's annual conference. The union said the strikes will force train operators to cancel all services, causing travel disruption for passengers. 80 prison officers at HMP Wandsworth did not attend their shifts on the day Daniel Khalif escaped from prison. That's according to a government minister. The 21-year-old terror suspect escaped from Wandsworth prison last week and was later arrested after a 4-day manhunt. Khalif disappeared while awaiting trial after being charged with terror offences in January. An investigation will look at whether the prison followed relevant protocols. Labour has pledged to create temporary so-called Nightingale courts to speed up asylum decisions. The party is also pledging to hire over 1,000 Home Office caseworkers to clear the claims backlog and fast-track decisions for applicants from certain countries. They plan to stop using hotels, barges and former military sites to house asylum seekers, which they claim cost taxpayers over £2 billion a year. And finally, the iconic black sheep woolly jumper worn by Diana, Princess of Wales, has been sold at auction in New York for £920,000. The jumper, which shows a black sheep among a row of white sheep, was discovered in an attic in March by designer Joanna Osborne. It was famously worn by Diana at a polo match in June 1981, shortly after her engagement to the then Prince Charles. This is GB News across the UK on your TV, in your car, on digital radio and now on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Loads on this hour, but I just want to kick off with this. So is it right that the American XL bully breed should be banned? Should they all be killed? Initially, all my instincts say no, for a few reasons. I love dogs. I would blame the owner before I blamed the dog. It's clear that not every XL bully is a threat, so we'd be banning or potentially killing loads of innocent dogs. I also just don't really like banning stuff in general. It seems to be our solution to everything these days. Don't like something? Ban it. Don't like someone? Cancel them. There is also this grey area now of people who own XL bully crosses. Do their dogs have to be put down? Are they banned? Can they breed them? But then I see some of the stats, and I see that the XL bully breed was linked to 6 of the 10 fatal dog attacks in the UK in 2022, and has been involved in at least 2 fatalities this year, possibly even 1 more, actually. We're still waiting for confirmation on that. But now more and more people are coming out to say that their dog was attacked by an XL bully, and there are reports of kids having to run away from their way home from school, all of that stuff. And I think, well, you can't really not act, can you? Bullies will have to be registered as a breed, then banned. That would mean that the police could take them off you if they saw you with one in a public area. They could get a warrant and take it out of your own home. It would also be illegal for anyone to own, breed or sell them. However, there are exemptions to the banned dogs rule, which may have a rare glimmer of hope here for somebody if they happen to have a well-mannered XL bully. Because if the court does not believe it to be a danger to the public, it may be put on an index of exempt dogs, which means that you can keep it, but in this circumstance, you will be given a certificate of exemption that is valid for the life of the dog, right? And you will need to follow strict rules. If placed on this index, the dog must be neutered, microchipped, kept on a lead and muzzled at all times when in public or kept in a secure place so it can't escape. All right, I suppose at least it gets to live. So there are ways around it that don't involve dog catchers and the vet's lethal injection. What I will say about all of this, though, and I stand by this, is that this isn't the dog's fault. This is all down to humans. Humans created these dogs, we bred them, we made them, we did this. So if there is an inherently dangerous streak to them, we created that. Secondly, if a lot of these dogs are bought and then trained by gangsters or bad people, then frankly, if the dog turns out to be a wrong 'un, I blame the humans again. XL bullies are a problem for humans, but I think we should all acknowledge that this problem was created by humans. Well, I am joined, actually, by Mark White, who's our Home and Security Editor, with a bit of breaking news, although not about XL bullies. Mark, what's going on?
It's an unfolding incident in Dover. Our Kent producer, who's on duty down in Dover, as he is most days filming the migrant arrivals, has got these shots, and I'll just explain for our radio listeners. That shows authorities wearing these white biohazard suits down at Dover Harbour, and they've also erected a number of these white forensic stroke biohazard type tents as well. And we've seen a number of Border Force vessels that have come in, Ranger, and also the volunteer that have come in with dozens of migrants on board. And it certainly appears that some of those on board are being shepherded the way off those blue tents. We understand that at least 4 boatloads from Border Force have come in today so far. There is another Border Force vessel, a catamaran, that is on its way in with a couple of small boatloads of people that they picked up. And you can see from these pictures as well, in a couple of the shots, there are at least 4 people that are being wheeled off in wheelchairs as well. So we don't know what it is, but we do know that there have been concerns, health issues surrounding some of those that have come from northern France, because what you have is people, of course, for weeks, sometimes months, camped out in just tents, if they're lucky, in various areas around Dunkirk and Calais. And these are breeding grounds for disease, so they can pick up diseases there. And of course, in recent weeks, we've had confirmed outbreaks of scabies and even tuberculosis at Wethersfield, that former RAF base in Essex, which is now running as an expanding accommodation centre for migrants. So we've reached out to the Home Office for comment then. They've not got back to us as yet, but all we can say is from what we've observed, there is certainly some kind of biohazard incident ongoing at Dover Harbour, with quite a number of people suited up in these white biohazard suits.
Yeah, I mean, it's concerning stuff, deeply concerning stuff, and hopefully at some point we manage to get to the bottom of that. No doubt you will be back in when you get some answers, Mark. Thank you very, very much. Mark White there, our Home and Security Editor. Well, Sir Keir Starmer has unveiled his party's plan to tackle the Channel crossings crisis, pledging to set up special fast-track Nightingale calls to tackle the asylum backlog applications, and attempting to negotiate a deal with the EU in return for smashing the smuggling gangs. It comes as the new GBNews People's Poll found that 68% of Conservatives and 67% of Leave voters think that immigration has made crime worse, as do nearly half of all voters, fuelling concerns about Britain's migration troubles. I'm going to be having a chat now, basically, about whether or not Keir Starmer has put his foot in it, and has he cost himself the next election as a result of his latest comments on migration and asylum seekers, etc. With me to debate this is Henry Bolton, OBE, no less, international security and border control expert, and you got a little sneak peek of him a couple of moments ago. It's Matthew Stadden, their political commentator. Great stuff, chaps. Right, OK, look, Henry, do you think that Keir Starmer may well have put his foot in it here, cost himself the next election by his comments in relation to what he'd quite like to do with the EU and a quota system for asylum seekers?
Well, I'm not sure he's lost the election with this, Patrick, because I think the election is being lost by the Conservatives rather than being won by Labour. But with regards to this plan that he's got, he's not thought this through. The people around him have not thought this through. The reality is that the EU's immigration and asylum policy is already struggling in terms of the distribution of asylum seekers within the European Union, let alone having sort of us in the mix. Yeah. If we were to take the proportion, or if you like, an equal proportion of the asylum seekers that the European Union receives, then we get anything between 100,000 and 180,000, probably somewhere in the middle. Difficult to say. Now, you can take away from that, probably, a large number or large proportion of the small boat crossings. But the essential point here is that we would end up taking more. The other thing is that what's he expect to get in return? Because he's going to get nothing in return. There is nothing that European Union has got to offer him. What he will do is he would present this in two ways. He would say, look, people wanted a safe route. Here's a safe route. People wanted the boats to be reduced. I've reduced the boats. Yeah. Right, OK, all well and good, but we are going to receive more asylum seekers, more immigration.
It's the cost to the taxpayer. It's the cost to the taxpayer. Look, Henry, I'll come back to you. Matthew, I'll bring you in here. The way I look at it is this. If he just kept his mouth shut about immigration, he was home and hosed, and then now he's piped up, and everyone's gone, hang on a minute, you want to drag us back into the European Union, we're going to have more asylum seekers, it's Tony Blair 2.0, the red wall's gone. I mean, what's he doing?
So, I mean, look, the reason Starmer has been as cautious as he has been, that has led to people like me saying we need a bit more from you, is precisely as you say, because he doesn't want to risk putting his foot in it, but he also doesn't want to come under unfair attack from the right-wing attack dogs. Now, this hasn't been blanketly covered even in the right-wing media. Yes, I think it's been on the front page of the Mail. A lot of the noise and fury about this is being fuelled from the Conservatives on social media and some right-wing commentators. I think, actually, what he's doing is being a bit grown up about this. The problem, the crisis of these boats coming across the sea, and it's not good for us, but it's also not good for the people who are risking their lives. This is something that has grown up under this Conservative administration. Let us not forget that. They haven't gotten a grip on it. They've had flagship sensationalist policies like Rwanda. They ain't going to work. So what is Starmer doing? First and foremost, he's doing what I've been calling on the government to be doing for months, and that's get very, very serious on the gangs. These people are very bad people, and what he's doing in Europe at the moment, being a grown-up, meeting Macron next week, which I think is a straw in the wind, suggesting that other European leaders think that Labour is going to win. What he's doing is saying we need to get a grip on these criminal gangs and crack down properly.
I understand that, and I think everybody does want to get to grips with these human trafficking gangs. That said, rejoining Europol, which is presumably an organisation that is already trying and failing to crack down on these human trafficking gangs, I'm not sure what would happen there. We'll have to wait and see. Henry, can I ask you about the actual numbers? Now, if people manage to get to Italy, islands like Lampedusa, where they've had about 8,000 or so in the last couple of days, if they want to get through to Britain, as it currently stands, they probably have to find another few thousand quid to pay to human traffickers to get them through Europe, get them to the Channel, and then get across that Channel and into Britain, which is, in some cases, prohibitively expensive to people. But now, if we knew that Britain was taking a quota, all they would have to do is find the money to get to Lampedusa, which clearly thousands of them can do. Is this going to result in more illegal immigration?
I think it is, because they're not going to be having to pay traffickers or people smugglers for small boats. We're going to be providing the transport for them. And that's got to be an encouragement. It's got to induce more. Now, I agree entirely with what Matthew's saying and Keir Starmer about going after the people smugglers themselves. I mean, they're a crucial element to all of this. But what's forgotten is that we were highly successfully hunting down people smuggling networks, not just disrupting them, but totally dismantling them up until the time Tony Blair pulled all the funding for it in 2006. Now, the UK was leading an international effort. We even had Australians and New Zealanders and Canadians helping us with that effort in the European region, in North Africa, in the Southern Balkans and so on. Tony Blair pulled the plug on that. Okay. Keir Starmer, the Home Office and the present government have forgotten all of that. We need to be forward-leaning and go hunting these people. Because as you rightly say, and I think you've been saying consistently, we've got a problem here now, because this is sending the wrong signals to economic migrants, saying that if this agreement goes ahead, Europe and the UK are open, we're going to help you.
All right, look, no, I am not against sticking it to Tony Blair every now and again, as regular viewers on this show will know. The problem with doing that at the moment is that the Tories have been in power for 13 years, and therefore, if you say, well, Tony Blair pulled the plug on it, well, they've had 13 years to fix it, and they haven't done that. So
I agree.
That is the issue, right? But, Matthew, on this, you alluded to something earlier on about Keir Starmer, where you said he's been a bit quiet and people are calling him to do more. Do you think that is because if he revealed his real politics, people wouldn't want to vote for that because they realise he actually would be a bit like Blair?
No, were he to be a bit more like Blair, we might be seeing something like a 1997 landslide, because Blair had charisma, and Starmer, whether you broadly support Labour or not, does not seem to have much charisma. So it'd be a good thing in that sense if he were a bit more like Blair. I just want to address this issue, this number that has been plucked, it seems, from absolutely nowhere, the 100,000. The right-wing, some of the right-wing press, some of the right-wing commentators, the Tories themselves are suggesting that Starmer wants to open the door to 100,000 illegal migrants or asylum seekers, whatever people decide to call them, a year. This is nonsense. It is fantasy. Starmer has never said that. There's no suggestion it would be 100,000.
Well, he's not said
No, but if he does a deal, Patrick, if he does do a deal, in order to stop these dangerous crossings, in order to stop this mess, in order to stop having to put people up in hotels at £6 million a day for us, if in order to do that, part of it, as well as smashing the gangs, and he says he'll be ruthless with them, he says he'll be... These are his words, twice as ruthless as the gangs themselves. If in order to do that we have to accept some people, then that's no bad thing. That's grown-up politics.
But the number is going to be undoubtedly going to be larger than now. Why should the European Union come up with some agreement to stop the boats when we're going to take less than we are now? It's not going to happen. And even EU diplomats are now sort of laughing at this. No, I mean, I held the civilian portfolio for border management for the European Union for 3 years, external of the European Union's own borders. And I can tell you that this is not going to happen. If Keir Starmer really believes that it's going to happen, then he's not competent to govern. If he's lying to us, which is the other alternative, he's still not competent.
Well, I think he might have made a mistake.
But Patrick, he's exploring it. There's no sense in which this is definitely going to happen. He's in opposition. He's not. The Tories haven't got a grip on this. He's trying to get a grip on it. If it proves unworkable, he won't do it. The most important thing, by the way, is going to speed up the system by which claims are processed. And if he can do that, that's going to save us billions.
Well, it will, unless it is just, OK, come on, in you come, lads, let's just wave it all through and reduce the back load. But we'll have to wait and see. Both of you, right, we could do this all day, and in many ways I wish that we did, but alas, there's other news. Henry Bolton there, OBE, International Security and Border Control expert, and Matthew Stadler as well, political commentator. It's back up to watch the cricket now, aren't you? Lucky for you. Right, OK, coming up, a new poll has revealed that parents are putting an increasingly less value on obedience. But are we at risk of raising a generation of children with no manners? It's all very well and good having these free-range kids, but when they're kicking the back of your seat on an aeroplane, look, I'm going to ask, is it ever OK to smite your kid? OK, Patrick Christys, GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day.
The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back. It is 4:26. You're watching and listening to me, Patrick Christys, on GB News, on your TV, online and radio. Still to come, as the government looks to delay a promised ban on gay conversion therapy. What's behind the delay? Is gay conversion therapy even OK? And it's the prison at the centre of the Daniel Khalif escape story. But it's operated by a bunch of skivers, as it's been revealed that 80 prison guards failed to turn up on the day that Khalif escaped. It's about 39% of staff off on the day that that guy got out. But a new study shows that British people are placing less importance on instilling obedience in their children compared to other countries. According to the Policy Institute at King's College London, Britain's came 20th out of 24 when it comes to obedience and 23rd out of 24 when it comes to responsibility. So teaching your kids obedience and state responsibility, can I just say, when you look around right now, is that a massive shock, actually? But the report states that countries which make obedience a top priority are Nigeria, Mexico and Egypt, whilst Japan, China, South Korea and Sweden, across those two topics, ranked below the UK. Joining us live from Devon, home educator and digital creator, is Karen Howden. Karen, thank you very, very much. Should we be teaching kids obedience and responsibility more? I mean, why are we not?
Well, I think, and hello, I don't know what parents are ranking these sort of virtues. I mean, when you are parenting a child, it's all about teaching them the traditional ways of being. You know how you need to behave, you know, you need to be polite, you need to be kind. And I can't really say I would prioritize anything. I know that my children need to behave a certain way because they need boundaries. They like boundaries. They need to know where they stop, where's the limit, not just for, you know, comportment, but also for safety.
Carol, can I ask? Look, you don't have to answer this, but where are you on the old? Is it ever all right to give your kid a clip round the ear debate?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and I'm not getting involved.
Oh, OK, all right, fair enough. See, I don't have to get involved because I haven't got kids, so I can't. No one can ask me that question. But I will say I'm not opposed to it. Right, I'm not opposed to it in principle, but anyway, we will leave that particular topic there then for you. But for me, it seems like there's a rise now in people going, you know, free-range parenting and all of this stuff. And what that culminates in, as far as I can tell, is a child screaming and kicking the back of my seat on an aeroplane and the parent just ignoring it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's important to note is that this generation of parents aren't any better than previous generations of parents. We may have quite different parenting styles, but that doesn't mean that we've got it right. And it also doesn't mean that our parents' generation got it right either. And I think the focus, which is highlighted in the study, is that maybe for the generation before us, there was more of a priority on obedience, as in you are seen and not heard, or you very much take your parents' lead.
Yeah.
And I think that now our generation are very much about emphasizing kindness, supporting independence, encouraging that sort of self-discovery, as opposed to, no, you are under the rule of your mother and father.
I think there's an indulgence maybe of a fantasy at times, perhaps you could say. You know, the kids should have a healthy mixture, I think, of, you know, really nice enjoyment, freedom to explore the world and to dream and it to be a magical place, but also taught that you chew with your mouth closed and you say please and thank you, and, you know, please, for the love of God, don't embarrass me at a restaurant.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the number of times that I have spoken through gritted teeth, you know, just but I think it's important to note that, I mean, my husband and I were both teachers, or we have a history of being teachers, and we understand the importance of children understanding boundaries, what's right, what's wrong. Don't embarrass us, be polite, you know, do yourself a service. You know, I understand, and obviously we're country living. My boys don't own shoes more of the time than not. They're just barefoot all the time. But I do understand the mutual respect for people who don't have children, and that they are out in society. Don't forget, we are growing the next generation to fit into a society where there are expectations of them to behave.
But this is my problem. This is part of the problem. This is the part of the problem, which is, you know, I do tend to look around at society a bit now, and I think, well, that ship might have sailed, unfortunately. But look, thank you very much. Great to chat. Lovely to see you again. Have a lovely weekend. It's Karen Howden there from Devon, who is a home educator and digital creator. We're having a good-natured chat there. I think there's a very serious undertone to this now, which is, I think a lot of people infantilize their kids to the point where they decide not to discipline them, and then they will teach them no personal responsibility, and those kids grow up to be completely unruly, shoplifting idiots who decide to take no personal responsibility for the fact that they are, you know, everything's somebody else's fault, isn't it? And then the parent as well. The parent, you know, they let society pick up the mess for the fact they've done a bad job of raising their kid. Anyway, still to come between now and 5 o'clock. Should the government be delaying the ban on gay conversion therapy? Banning the therapy is not as easy as some would like to think. Could the legislation mean that adults and parents could be punished if they question a child's wish to change gender? That is the bit that I'm most interested in. But right now, it's your headlines with Polly McLast.
Patrick, thank you. The top stories this hour. The man killed in a dog attack in Staffordshire yesterday afternoon has been named by police as 52-year-old Ian Price. And a man has been arrested on suspicion of being in charge of 2 dangerous dogs believed to be American XL bullies. The Prime Minister has today said the breed will be banned in the UK by the end of the year. Also in the news today, Sarah Sharif's family have been remanded in custody after being charged with the 10-year-old's murder. Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, and his partner and brother appeared in court today. They've also been charged with causing or allowing the death of a child. And unions have vowed to fight the government after a £500 million investment in Tata Steel has put 3,000 jobs at risk. Tata has been in talks with the government to switch from coal to electric furnaces in an effort to reduce carbon emissions. More on all those stories by heading to our website, gbnews.com.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McKibben here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Another warm day in the south, much cooler further north with some cloud and rain in places, predominantly across parts of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England because of a stationary warm front which really is continuing to bring a band of cloud and outbreaks of rain. The heaviest rain likely across the southern uplands, the far north of England, parts of southeast Northern Ireland. To the far north, Scotland, we're going to see showers and some clear spells overnight, turning quite chilly here. Much warmer further south and humid with the risk of thundery showers moving up across southwestern parts at times. 15 to 16 Celsius in the south first thing, but we have got some cloud about and those thundery showers across parts of Wales, south and southwest England continuing for a time. It does tend to brighten up for a while into the afternoon with some warm sunshine developing, and there'll be some sunny spells for the central and northern part of Scotland, Northern Ireland. Cooler here, but with also a few showers in the far north of Scotland. An area of cloud persists across southern Scotland, northern England, but the rain tending to fizzle out through the day. Then into Sunday, this plume of thundery rain pushes north across many parts of the UK. Hit and miss downpours, but where we see these thunderstorms, they could be fairly lively. Further thundery showers into Monday and Tuesday, turning cooler widely.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
It looks like the government plans to ban gay conversion therapy could be ditched amid concerns that the draft bill could have unintended consequences for parents and teachers dealing with trans children. So Boris Johnson pledged to end the discredited practice during the 2019 election, but yesterday, Commons leader Penny Mordaunt dodged answering questions about whether the commitment to implement the ban will be met. It's worth noting, when it comes to Penny Mordaunt, that she actually in the past has courted a bit of controversy amongst Conservative voters by saying, trans women are women. So I don't really think this can be accused of being a Penny Mordaunt transphobic thing, particularly, to be honest with you. But should the government be delaying the ban on gay conversion therapy? And what could the issues be at home if you, say, have a 12 or 13-year-old son or daughter who starts to say that they're questioning the body that they're born into? As a parent, if you say, I don't think you need medication for that, maybe you should see some therapy, would you then be a criminal? I don't think you can be a criminal for doing that, surely. But joining me now is Peter Tatchell, LGBTQ activist and director of the Peter Tatchell Foundation. Peter, thank you very much. Look, your overall take on whether or not this banning of gay conversion therapy should be delayed, scrapped, what's going on?
Well, first let me say that the ban on conversion therapy, which is the attempt to change someone's sexual orientation or gender identity, was first promised by Theresa May way back in July 2018. And it has been repeatedly reiterated and reconfirmed by successive leaders ever since. Even just in March this year, Penny Mordaunt did promise the legislation would come forward and be in the King's speech in November. Now the government appears to have ditched that. It is going against all the advice from the world's leading medical, psychiatric, and counselling organisations. They all say that these practices are abusive, unethical, harmful, and they don't work. Now, to answer your point, I think it is very, very unclear as to what the supposed unintended consequences are, because there are safeguards. 25 countries have already banned conversion therapy. The Australian state of Victoria has a model example of legislation which is working very, very well, where none of these anxieties or fears have materialised. And we could simply cherry pick that and make some very minor amendments, and it would work well for Britain. So why the hell is there?
I think the concern is that, let's say I had a 13-year-old son, and that son came home and said, "Dad, I think I've been born into the wrong body." And I said, "Look, I think maybe you're going through a bit of a phase, or let's explore this. Is there an underlying issue here? Or do you want to go and see a therapist?" That then might make me a criminal.
Well, none of the proposed legislations or the existing legislations anywhere in the world allow for that. They all give the parents the right to talk to their children about it and to question their decision. So that is an unfounded fear. And I think, just be reassured, there are 25 countries, not just states in Australia and the US, but also Canada, New Zealand, France, a very long list where the ban has worked well and parental rights have not been usurped.
What goes on at gay conversion therapy?
Well, there are many different forms. The traditional form is a psychiatrist or psychologist will seek to persuade, sometimes pressure, a young person to change their sexuality or gender identity. But it can include quite abusive treatments, including...
It does work for some people, though, Peter, doesn't it? Some people have gone through it and stand by it. So some people for whom they feel, especially if they've got extremely strident religious views, and they feel as though, in a fundamentalist sense, that their sexuality may well contradict their religion. Sometimes people go through it and they swear by it, though, don't they?
Well, it's a very, very tiny minority, and I've got to say that most of those people have since subsequently been caught out continuing to be gay and have same-sex relationships. They've been exposed for pretending or proclaiming that they've changed, but they actually haven't.
Yeah.
But never mind, even so, the therapies have been exposed in reports as being very abusive and psychologically damaging. People who undergo conversion therapy tend to have very high levels of anxiety, depression, and even suicidal thoughts. And I know friends of mine from many years ago who went through some of these conversion therapies, and they were not cured, but they were made a psychological and emotional wreck. They had a nervous breakdown. So I think it's a very bad practice to pursue, and we should follow the leading psychiatrists, medical experts, and counsellors who say the practice is wrong.
Oh, look, Peter, thank you very, very much. It's interesting stuff. It's actually kind of, for once, a story that I don't have personal, strong views on, so it's quite nice to have a chat with you about it. Peter Tatchell, LGBTQ activist and director of the Peter Tatchell Foundation. Right. In other news, it was the manhunt that captivated the nation. Escaped terror suspect Daniel Khalif, who spent 3 days on the run in London before, of course, he was apprehended. Now, it's turned out that 80 prison officers at Wandsworth skipped their shifts. 39% of staff off-ski on that day. What's going on? A former Wandsworth prisoner joins me now, David Shipley. David, thank you very much. Is it a shock to you that nearly 40% of Wandsworth staff were off?
No, not at all. I think this is quite typical. So if you look at the most recent inspection that Charlie Taylor's been talking about this week, 35-40% of staff off is a normal day at Wandsworth.
Yeah, I mean, why don't more of you escape?
I mean, that I suppose is the question. I think the thing is, our prisons operate under this kind of cloak of secrecy and disinterest. We don't normally talk about them. No one ever is very interested in the detail of what's going on in our prisons. And I think with this story of Daniel Khalif's escape being in the news, people are now starting to look into the detail of how Wandsworth actually operates, how other prisons operate. And there's going to be more and more stories like this coming out where everyone's shocked, because how can you run a prison with 40% of its officers off sick?
Do you buy it? Do you buy it, David? This line that's coming out now that's saying, oh, well, this just shows how tough it really is in prisons, and that it's having an effect on the mental health and all of that of prison staff. I can sympathise with that, but prisons are a bad place that tend to be where we put bad people. So isn't that just what you get?
I mean, I think prisons are a tough place, and they're always going to be a tough environment to work. But I think there are particular things about the way we construct our prison system which makes it damaging and traumatising for the prisoners, but also for the staff. And understaffing contributes to that. If you're always stretched thin, there's one or two of you responsible for 100 potentially dangerous men on a wing. You're always looking over your shoulder. That must be a really stressful environment to work in. And I think it's not surprising that a lot of officers burn out, or they turn to drink, or they become depressed, or they kind of switch off emotionally because they are operating in an environment where they're under a huge amount of strain.
I just find it absolutely staggering that on the day that Daniel Khalif escaped, they could say that 39% of prison staff were off. And by the way, apparently that's not a bad day. Apparently that's like not far off bang average, which I'd find remarkable. Anyway, David, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to chat. David Shipley there is a former Wandsworth prisoner. Hopefully he's not escaped. I think he is genuinely out and about, but there we go. Artificial intelligence, is it a threat to civilization? Yes, that's right. That's according to Elon Musk. So, could AI be a bigger threat than we think. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News. We are Britain's news channel. Oh, and also we'll have an update for you on a supposed biohazard incident taking place at Dover Harbour. Don't miss out for the latest.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It is 3:48. You're watching and listening to me, Patrick Christys, on GB News TV, online radio. Now, a delegation of tech leaders have met in Washington, D.C. this week for a closed-door meeting with senators to discuss the rise and the threat of artificial intelligence. The meeting was billed as an AI safety forum, but interestingly, adding to Elon Musk's comments earlier this year, a consensus amongst tech leaders was that AI needs to be regulated. Look, I'll save us a lot of time and say what they actually said, which is that it could be a threat to civilization, which, I mean, that pricked my ears up. I don't know about you. Joining me now is broadcaster, lawyer, futurist. It's Andrew Eborn. Andrew, thank you very, very much. Is AI going to kill us all?
Well, I tell you what, AI is probably the greatest human achievement, but also the biggest potential existential threat. And the reason for that is because it can do all sorts of wonderful things. It can replicate whatever we can do as humans, but there's a number of dangers. So there's two dangers. One is when the input, the data that you put in, and people talk about prejudice and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And there's also then the output. And there's all sorts of things about how that can work against people. And you have things such as hallucinations, where if ChatGPT doesn't know the answer to something, it makes it up. So there's a case...
Seriously?
Yeah, it's amazing. So there's a case at the moment...
But in a way, that's quite human, right? I mean, we've all been in a situation like that.
Like a politician...
Someone asks you a question, you don't know, you just make it up.
Well, the danger is this, is that there's been a law professor in the States, there's a radio host in the States, where he basically said he was accused of embezzlement when people looked about it, and it wasn't true at all. So he is now suing the owners of ChatGPT, a company called OpenAI, for defamation. So interesting stuff. And the actors' strike at the moment in Hollywood is all about AI and how AI is going to replace loads of jobs. And it was Goldman Sachs, in fact, who said there are about 300 million jobs are going to be lost to AI.
So when people hear about AI and they think threat to civilization, I think certainly where my mind goes is armed robots on the streets or nuclear weapons being fired everywhere. But actually, I think the more existential threat to civilization, I think, is the fact that it would render billions of people's jobs irrelevant. You are then unemployed. We have some kind of, I don't know, living allowance or something along those lines. But big corporations, like your Apples of this world and all of that, need you to continue to be able to afford to buy their products. So if you're not working, they all go bust, and society crumbles.
Yes. No, you're right, and that's one angle to it. But the new jobs will be created. Technology is always... People said the same thing. Hang about the printing press, that's going to do everybody out of jobs. And they come up with new things. I mean, the internet, they were saying that's going to destroy zillions of people, travel agents and so on and so forth. The reality is new jobs will be created. What's going to happen is we're going to have more leisure time, and so you need to look at that sort of side. But some of the big threats as well are things about misinformation. We're living in a very diseased information world, and you have politics at the moment where you can basically have... You might remember the fake Pope who was wearing a puffer jacket. Do you remember that? The devil may wear Prada.
These are the pictures that AI can create. And one of the things as well, by the way, that was on your screens a moment ago, if you're watching us on TV, if you're listening on radio, go back and watch it when you get home, but was basically a fake girlfriend.
Yes.
OK, which I can imagine for a certain type of man might be very appealing.
Well,
the institution of marriage goes out the window.
Well, and worse than that, people are developing relationships with AI girlfriends. And there was a very famous case recently in court, in fact, in the last few days. Jaswant Singh Chel, who basically was the chap who climbed in to kill the Queen with a crossbow. And he basically said he was encouraged by his AI girlfriend to do that. So people develop a relationship. And in fact, the University of California, basically, they worked out that chatting to ChatGPT was better than chatting to your GP because it's got more empathy, it will spend more time.
By the way, can I just say, that is really saying something if they go, this chatbot has got more empathy than that human being who you go to with a hernia.
Oh, absolutely. And it's worse than that, Patrick, as well, because it can now, not just the typing bit, it can imitate your favourite voice. It will know more about you than your mother will know.
Well, it recreates songs, it does all sorts. You know, I am pretty concerned that there is some truth in this, and I think we have maybe created a monster, and we've got the experts, the industry leaders, the creators of AI, and people who are, you know, tech boffins who are basically all saying, look, this is dangerous.
It is dangerous, but they're also saying, they're balancing that, saying it's also a tremendous opportunity. I'm just going to give you an example. I mean, here we are. I've got one out of the cutlery thing here.
Always
if you have a fork, I can use that for eating spaghetti.
Are you an AI Yuri Geller?
I could work on that sort of basis. But you've got a fork, you can eat spaghetti, but you could also stab somebody in the back.
Right.
What you don't do is stop the production of forks. You regulate how that should happen. And so what all these tech titans are doing is looking at the ways that we might be able to put safeguards in. And the UK, to our credit, we're going to be having the first AI Safety Summit here at Bletchley Park on the 1st and 2nd of November. Rishi Sunak's invitation to get all the people over to have a look at that sort of side. And we could be front and centre of AI regulation.
We could. I really appreciate you coming in, and I also appreciate you not, which I did think you were about to do for a second there, stab me in the face with a fork. Andrew Ebor, thank you very much. Broadcaster, lawyer, futurist. Now, I'm just going to finish off very, very quickly with a little clip for you. I do a thing called Pick of the Day, Patrick's Pick of the Day, which we probably should get a theme tune for. Anyway, Jeremy Vine featured on it yesterday because of his bike crash. Now he's back on it again. I believe I can play you a little clip of a different kind of crash from Jeremy Vine.
I've always wondered about them. Vivian is in Southampton. Vivian.
Hello, Jeremy. Nice to speak to you.
Over to you. Gosh, whenever I say Vivian, I expect a woman. Isn't that crazy?
I'm transgendered, Jeremy.
OK, forgive me, I wasn't meaning to go into that.
Oh, he's had a shocker. Oh, no, you hate to see it, don't you? Just don't go around saying things like that. Anyway, right, that was Jeremy Vine there having an absolute shocker. Now, loads more still to come on this show, and we'll get the latest on the Biohazard incident at Dover Harbour. Patrick, Christys, GBNews, seen a tick.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McKibben here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Another warm day in the south, much cooler further north with some cloud and rain in places, predominantly across parts of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England because of a stationary warm front which really is continuing to bring a band of cloud and outbreaks of rain. The heaviest rain likely across the southern uplands, the far north of England, parts of southeast Northern Ireland. To the far north, Scotland, we're going to see showers and some clear spells overnight, turning quite chilly here. Much warmer further south and humid with the risk of thundery showers moving up across southwestern parts at times. 15 to 16 Celsius in the south first thing, but we have got some cloud about and those thundery showers across parts of Wales, south and southwest England continuing for a time. It does tend to brighten up for a while into the afternoon with some warm sunshine developing, and there'll be some sunny spells for the central and northern part of Scotland, Northern Ireland. Cooler here, but with also a few showers in the far north of Scotland. An area of cloud persists across southern Scotland, northern England, but the rain tending to fizzle out through the day. Then into Sunday, this plume of thundery rain pushes north across many parts of the UK. Hit and miss downpours, but where we see these thunderstorms, they could be fairly lively. Further thundery showers into Monday and Tuesday, turning cooler widely.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's 5 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News. As Keir Starmer already lost the next general election with his bizarre EU migrant plan. Has the mask slipped? Is it Tony Blair 2.0? We'll be having a chat about all of that. Also, should we be banning/exterminating these XL bully dogs? Another man is alleged to have died following an attack, potentially by these dogs. Rishi Sunak's waded in. Is that OK, though? Is it ethical to ban some of these dogs? I'm on the fence about this. I'm not quite sure. Now, this is a breaking story, OK? There is an ongoing, what appears to be, a biohazard incident at Dover Harbour. We can see guards here in hazmat suits. These blue tents have been erected as well. Migrants coming across the channel appear to be being checked for something. We await a bit more information. Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, will be at the top of this hour, hopefully, with a bit more info for us. What else have I got for you this hour? Yes, OK, Humza Yousaf's dodgy data, that's right. Did the leader of the SNP, Scotland's First Minister, has he actually fabricated some data to suit his argument about renewable energies? Surely not. And I'm sorry as well, but, you know, if you've got Sadiq Khan, you've got Humza Yousaf, if they're all massaging data in order to get the answer that they want about renewables, I don't know about you, but it makes me question, how good are they? Patrick Christys, GB News. Get your emails coming in, gbviews@gbnews.com. Latest on this, what appears to be a biohazard incident at Dover Harbour. But I want your views, primarily on the XL bullies. Is it right to ban them? And Keir Starmer, what do you make of his migrant plans? But right now, it's your headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. Well, we begin this bulletin on GB News with some breaking news. We've heard that in the last few minutes, the former nurse, Lucy Letby, has filed a bid to challenge her conviction at the Court of Appeal. The most prolific child serial killer in modern British history was found guilty of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 6 more at the Countess of Chester Hospital between 2015 and 2016. The 33-year-old was given a whole life term at Manchester Crown Court. That news just coming to us that Lucy Letby plans to appeal against her sentence. More on that as we get it. Now, the other main news on GB News today is that a man attacked in a dog attack in Staffordshire has been named by police. He was 52-year-old Ian Price. He died in hospital after being seriously injured in Stonnell near Walsall around 3:15 yesterday afternoon in Staffordshire. He was attacked by 2 dogs, and a 30-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of being in charge of dogs dangerously out of control and causing injury. It's believed both dogs were American XL bullies. The Prime Minister has said today the breed will be banned in the UK by the end of the year. Labour also supports the proposed ban.
The first step is to convene a group of experts in the field and the police to define the breed, and then using the powers under the existing Dangerous Dogs Act, we will then be able to ban the breed, and laws will be in place by the end of the year. But it's clear from the attacks we've seen, tragic incidences, that we do need to take action to protect the public and stop these attacks, and that's what we're going to do.
Rishi Sunak. Now, 3 members of Sarah Sharif's family have been remanded in custody after being charged with the 10-year-old's murder. Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, and his partner and brother appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court today. They've also been charged with causing or allowing the death of a child. Sarah was found dead at her home in Woking in Surrey after officers were called from Pakistan by her father on the 10th of August. Unions have vowed to fight the government tooth and nail after a £500 million government investment in Tata Steel has, according to the union, put 3,000 jobs at risk. The government says, however, it will support more than 12,000 jobs in the sector overall. Tata has been in talks with the government to switch from coal to electric furnaces in an effort to reduce carbon emissions by 1.5%. Business and Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch says the government is saving the industry.
This is good for the taxpayer, this is good for the workforce, because actually when we do have new electric arc furnaces, we're going to be able to have many more industries. We can have offshore wind, there'll be a whole redevelopment of the site. This is actually a great deal, not just for Port Talbot, but for the UK. And what I would say to people who are concerned about job losses is that we do understand, and we have a transition plan in place that's funded up to about £100 million to make sure that people have skills to retrain.
But Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds says the government should be creating jobs.
I think only this Conservative government could spend £500 million making thousands of people redundant. I was at Port Talbot yesterday. I was talking to the workforce. Of course they support green steel. Of course they want to see this transition take place, but they were promised they'd be a part of it. They were promised they'd be consulted on the plans for the future. And fundamentally this should be a story about more jobs. There are huge opportunities for green steel in the UK, and the way that this has been presented to them obviously has them worried.
Train drivers will strike at the end of this month in their long-running dispute over pay. The ASLEF union says its members at 16 train operators will walk out on the 30th of September and on the 4th of October. The action will coincide with the Conservative Party's annual conference. The union said the strikes would force train operators to cancel all services, causing travel disruption for passengers. Now, 80 prison officers at HMP Wandsworth did not attend their shifts on the day Daniel Khalif escaped from prison. That's according to a government minister. The 21-year-old terror suspect escaped from Wandsworth prison last week and was later arrested after a 4-day manhunt. Khalif disappeared while awaiting trial after being charged with terror offences in January. An investigation will look at whether the prison followed relevant protocols. And finally, the iconic black sheep woolen jumper worn by Diana, Princess of Wales, has sold at auction in New York for £920,000. The jumper, which shows a black sheep among a row of white sheep, was discovered in an attic in March by designer Joanna Osborne, and it was famously worn by Diana at a polo match in June 1981, shortly after her engagement to the then Prince Charles. This is GB News across the UK on your TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. More now from Patrick Christys.
Keir Starmer has had an absolute shocker. The mask has slipped and the Blair 2.0 has come out to play. If the Labour leader had just kept his mouth shut on immigration, he was home and hosed at the next election, but he decided to put his big boy pants on and take Yvette with him to role-play as Prime Minister around Europe. I'm here at The Hague, and many people, of course, think that he should have actually bumped into Tony Blair there, but that's a separate issue. And Yvette and I, we're going to go and knock some heads together. We're going to show that we can be trusted on the world stage. We're going to sort out the migrant crisis. Well, in reality, what's happened is that Keir Starmer has tried to float a deal that was utterly doomed to failure, would almost certainly result in us taking more illegal immigrants than we have now, do nothing to cut the migrant hotel bill, and would bring us closer to Europe. All the work he put in, trying to convince people he's no longer a signed-up Remainer, has gone out the window, and he's alienated anybody who voted for Brexit. Loads of people who live in the Red Wall, and anybody who wants to take fewer illegal immigrants. Crucially, He's also been completely mugged off by Brussels. EU diplomats slapped down his suggestions, saying they can't even get their own house in order. So there goes his big attempt to look powerful on the world stage. He's also unwittingly exposed what a slow-moving, divided, dysfunctional juggernaut of misery the European Union actually is. The Dublin Agreement didn't work. Anybody who says it did is lying. If it worked so well, why has the EU spent 7 years trying to come up with an alternative? Now they want each country to take a minimum of 30,000 people or pay 20,000 euros for each one that they don't take. Just under 250,000 people crossed the EU's external borders in the first 8 months of this year. That is up 18% on last year, the highest since 2016, and let's be honest, it's only going to go up, isn't it? Countries with a large population and economy will take more, apart from the fact that Germany and France have just stopped taking migrants from Italy because they say that the Italians aren't doing their bit, despite Lampedusa welcoming more than 8,000 people in the last 2 days. Oh, and the whole plan has stalled anyway, because Hungary and Poland, who appear to be among the only countries left in Europe who value their culture, are dead against it. Anyway, Keir Starmer has tried to grandstand, failed. Tried to come up with a policy, failed. Tried to foster closer ties with Europe, which is political suicide, by the way, but crucially he's also failed at that. So he hasn't even got what he wanted. Currently, under the Tories, we are doing an appalling job of controlling our borders. But the fact is that Keir Starmer was happy to let the European Union dictate our border policy to us, and surely that is even worse. Let's go to Mark White now, our Home and Security Editor, with the latest from Dover, where last time we spoke, Mark, there appeared to be some kind of biohazard going on.
Yeah, still no word from the Home Office as to what exactly this is, but our producer down in Kent, who's on the cliff tops overlooking Dover Harbour most days for arrivals there, got some images of those Border Force and other officials in white biohazard suits. You can see their coveralls and goggles that they're wearing, and right next to them are a number of these biohazard forensic type blue tents. And what we saw throughout the course of a couple of hours is some boats that came in, Border Force vessels that were taking migrants down the gangway there towards the blue tents, did usher some of those migrants into the blue tents themselves. So quite what the health concerns are, we don't know, but it's very clear from looking at them in the way that they're dressed that they're there because there is some issue.
What could that be? Could that be
issue.
intel-led? I mean, could that be something from the French side saying, look, we've seen outbreaks of this, this, this and this, so be aware that people coming across the channel are more likely to be unwell?
Or it could be that they've actually found something when they've pulled people out of the water. They may well have carried out some tests or been told something by the migrants. We don't know exactly what it is, but it means, effectively, that they have to take these precautions. And we know that there are health risks associated with those who have been living rough in France, around Calais and Dunkirk, sleeping rough in tents, if they're lucky, sometimes for weeks, even months. And they've been picking up all kinds of diseases, including scabies, tuberculosis, which the Wethersfield base, that former RAF site, that base in Essex, which is now home to a couple of hundred migrants, it's expanding all the time. They had outbreaks of disease there. So there is clearly concern. It may be related to that. The Home Office, as I say, have been reached out to for contact and information, but they haven't come back.
Well,
with anything.
I would imagine they'd have to tell us something soon. I mean, they've slapped a load of blue tents and people are wearing biohazard outfits at our border and a load of people are arriving. So it'd be quite nice if the public had an idea of what was going on. But, Mark, thank you very much. Mark White, there, our Home and Security Editor. Mark will break more on that as we get it. But, well, as you were hearing, Sir Keir Starmer has unveiled his party's plan to tackle the Channel migrant crisis, pledging to set up special fast-track Nightingale courts to tackle asylum backlog applications and attempting to negotiate a deal with the EU in return for smashing the smuggling gangs. It comes as the new GB News People's poll found that 68% of Conservatives and 67% of Leavers think immigration has made crime worse, as do nearly half of all voters, fueling concerns about Britain's migration troubles. I am joined now by Michael Fabricant, Conservative MP for Lichfield. Michael, always a pleasure to see you. Has Keir Starmer secured, or scored even, a massive political own goal here? Or actually, is he onto something?
I wonder whether he actually believes any of it himself. He went for a meeting, as you said, in The Hague. The European Union themselves can't agree on actually how many people each country should take. He's now saying, oh, I can do a deal with the European Union because I'm prepared to speak to them. The European officials are now briefing that he is deluded because they can't get an agreement within themselves. They're certainly not going to get an agreement with a country outside the EU, the United Kingdom. And even if he got an agreement, what would it mean? It would mean that we'd be taking in, as part of that agreement, always assuming there was an agreement, 100 to 120,000 immigrants that the European Union want to dump on us. And if people aren't included in that list and they're on the camps in tents in Calais, they're still going to come across by boat. So he's got no solution whatsoever.
Look, there is a chance that it's actually going to increase the number of people that we end up taking, but also that Europe takes as a whole, because if people know that they only have to find the money to get from Africa to Lampedusa, then actually they don't then have to find more money to travel across the continent and then pay a human trafficker to get them across the channel. So, realistically, it could end up leading to more migrants coming across, which I don't think anyone would think would be a particularly great thing, because we would still have the problem, Michael, wouldn't we, of the taxpayer having to pay for these people to live somewhere. So that's not being solved, is it?
That's right. That's right. And, you know, every time we have tried to do something in Parliament, like have a real deterrent by being able to send them off to Rwanda or wherever, every time we do that, Keir Starmer, almost forgot his name there, Keir Starmer and his motley crew opposite vote against it. I mean, as one of your specialists said on GB News this morning, the Conservatives at the moment have not succeeded in stopping the boats because, of course, we haven't been able to send them off to Rwanda, but at least the Conservatives are trying. And he says the problem with Labour is they don't even want to try. They want the immigrants to come here, regardless of whether or not they're being persecuted or whether, in fact, they just choose to come here.
So, look, do you think that there is something deliberate? Keir Starmer will say, I want to stop the channel migrant crisis, I want to create a safe and legal route. These are some people's priorities, therefore that is what this would do. So, you know, is he onto something there? I mean, is that something that you think, you know, people could actually get behind and screw the numbers? We'll take more, but as long as we've not got people drowning in the channel and I can say the safe and legal routes, that's enough.
Well, I think anybody who actually believes what Keir Starmer is actually saying has to be incredibly naive or a very, very red socialist indeed and doesn't really care what he says. The point is, you know, you've got Yvette Cooper spouting on that she's going to take an extra 1,000 experts in order to deal with the number of migrants who have come over here, so there isn't a backlog. She doesn't say where she's going to get these 1,000 experts from. And what's going to happen? Either they will be agreed to that they can stay here, and they probably will under a Labour government, or they'll have to be sent back somewhere. But
The thing is, I do wonder though, Michael. I mean, I've made my views on Keir Starmer's migrant policy pretty flipping clear, right? But I do wonder whether or not the Tories have given him an absolute gift, because there's two factors at play here, which is that, as far as I can tell at the moment, basically everybody's staying anyway under a Conservative government, and B, you know, you've been in power for 13 years and we're in a mess. So could it be that much worse? And he has those things on his side, doesn't he? He can now, despite never wanting to be seen anywhere near Tony Blair, because people don't want to call him Tony Blair 2.0, he can go to Brussels, he can go to The Hague, go to the EU, talk to them, meet Macron, do something that is essentially dragging us back into the European Union and still back his chances of winning an election.
Well, I mean, that's exactly the argument. Of course, he's saying, well, they've been there 13 years. Come on, I might be useless, but you know what? I won't be any more useless than the Tories. And that's more or less what he's saying. Actually, it's only been the last 4 or 5 years that the people traffickers have been sending the boats across, and we've been trying very hard to stop it. And as I've said to you before, Patrick, actually the French police have stopped about half the movements across the English Channel, but that's still a half too much who are coming over here. The problem is he's not coming up with any solutions, and every time we come up with a solution, like the very real threat of sending them to Rwanda and other countries, he votes against it. I actually think he wants them over here.
Do you think there's part of a plan then? Do you think why would Keir Starmer actively want 100 to 180,000 people a year as part of an EU quota scheme?
I think he simply thinks that by going over to The Hague, saying rather naive, silly statements like, oh, you know, the other day, by the way, he said, I would actually negotiate with Europe. Oh, yeah. The Conservatives are not talking to of course we're talking to the European Union. We talk with them all the time, and we know full well the European Union can't do a deal. They're not able to do a deal. But of course he does his little soundbite and says, I'll do a deal, as if we're not doing anything at all.
The benefit to come out of it, Michael,
the general election.
As you were alluding to there, the absolute benefit that's come out of this, which is that it's highlighted again some of the inner turmoil in the European Union. You've got Hungary and Poland saying we want no part of an asylum seeker quota. Italy's just welcomed 8,000 people, mostly from Africa, mostly men, on the island of Lampedusa in the last couple of days. France and Germany are saying we actually don't want to take anyone from Italy because we don't think they're doing their bit, which I imagine the people of Italy would laugh at, really, the idea they're not doing enough. And alas, here we go. Michael, thank you very, very much. Michael Fabricant there, Conservative MP for Lichfield, friend of the show, friend of the channel there. Following a series of attacks, the Prime Minister has announced that the American XL bully dogs are set to be banned by the end of the year. What does that really mean? What does it mean for cross-breeds of bullies, etc.? Is it not all the owner's fault? Patrick Christys, GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 24 minutes past 5. You're watching and listening to me, Patrick Christys, on GB News TV, radio and online. Still to come. First, it was Sadiq Khan. Now, Humza Yousaf stands accused. What's behind the rise of public officials looking to massage or cover up data to support their cause, especially on the environment? I'll be telling you exactly what all that's about shortly. And a GB News exclusive poll has revealed almost 2 in 3 Brits would back a zero-tolerance approach from the police towards those caught shoplifting. What does that really mean, then? Do you lock them all up? We'd have to build more prisons. But before that, the American XL bully dog will be banned by the end of the year following a series of attacks. That's according to our Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. This, of course, comes after a 30-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of being in charge of dogs dangerously out of control, causing injury, and has been further arrested on suspicion of manslaughter after a man died following an attack in Stonewall yesterday. This is, of course, the latest of a line of XL bully issues. I've got a poll that's just closed, actually, on my Twitter. 75% of you apparently think that we should be banning XL bullies. I'm very conflicted about it. Our reporter Will Hollis has been out locally today, near where the attack took place, and he asked whether people thought the XL bully ban was right.
If they're going to be vicious, it's probably best to ban it, but at the end of the day, I think it's down to the owner whether the temperament of the dog.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Without even thinking about it.
Yes.
Yes.
This isn't something that's just happened today. It's been going on for a long time, and it's about time something was done.
Well, to be honest, my opinion is like a lot of people today. They should be banned.
I have a bully cross. All right, it's crossed with a Great Dane, so it's got absolutely no brain cells. But the most loving, sweetest dog you could ever meet, and it is purely the training of them.
I'm assuming the Great Dane was the father, otherwise that's a logistical nightmare. Would need a stepladder. Well, I can now speak with Margarita Takova, who is a spokesperson for the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, PETA, as it is more commonly known. Thank you very much for joining me. Great to have you on the show. Should we ban bullies?
Well, hi, Patrick. Thank you so much for having me on the show tonight. And yes, of course, banning the breeding of bullies is a very, very meaningful step forward to protect the public, but also to protect these really vulnerable dogs. As we all have to remember that bully breeds like Bully XL, American Bulldogs, they have been intentionally bred by humans to fight. And historically, they were used to fight really large mammals like, bears and bulls. And these dogs, we've bred these dogs to deliberately have really strong jaws, really muscular body, and very, very, very high prey drive. So this is why, sadly, we are hearing so many stories of attacks.
Because the RSPCA don't think we should ban them. So PETA and the RSPCA are at loggerheads now. Two kind of animal rights groups are kicking off about XL bullies, which kind of sums up where the nations are, I think. So you definitely blame the dog, not the owner.
Well, of course, it's a complex issue when a dog attack happens, and of course, irresponsible owners can be a part of it. But, one cannot deny that we've deliberately bred these really, really strong dogs, and because of their look, many thugs and criminals, they just choose these breeds as their, guard dogs, as this sort of macho symbol. And that's why they're so likely to be abused, to be chained, to be beaten, not to be socialized properly, to be caged. And you can't predict how a dog like this would behave. And also that's why so many bullies are being abandoned, and our shelters are full.
So would you just to clarify? Yeah, just to clarify on something then. So obviously, Peter, animal rights, the ethical treatment of animals, all of that stuff. If the diktat comes down to us now that we're going to start putting bullies down, we're going to euthanise American bullies, where would Peter be on that?
Well, of course, we want to focus on banning the breeding of these dogs. And existing bullies, if they're in good homes, if there is no track record of any aggressive behavior, of course, they should keep their homes. And we need to amend this piece of legislation just to be sure that, dogs in good homes can remain there. And also shelters that have bullies, if they're adoptable and if they screen properly humans who want to adopt such dogs, they should be allowed to do that. And what we really need to do is to spay and neuter all the existing dogs. We need to
what I'd be concerned, what I'd be concerned about is that now it's the XL bullies. I mean, I do wonder if their name doesn't help a little bit as well, to be fair. I mean, the fact that also they have killed a couple of people certainly doesn't help either. But I don't think the name helps them. It's XL bullies now. What about... there was something like 22,000 incidents last year of dogs out of control, dog attacks, issues like that. So we get rid of the XL bullies. And then let's say we have, 4 incidents in a week, randomly, of Staffordshire Bull Terriers doing something. Do we then ban staffies? Is it a slippery slope?
Well, you know what? Actually, it's humans who created all the breeds, and humans who created all these issues. And dogs themselves, they don't care about their looks. They don't care about, what breed they are. It's us humans who are obsessed with certain looks. And that's why we keep breeding more and more dogs who become vulnerable, who have several health issues. And given that around 700, I repeat, 700 animals are giving out to shelters every single day across the UK. Anyone who, whose moral standards are high enough to care about animals, anyone would be against breeding more dogs to this world.
Yeah.
There are our shelters full of perfectly adoptable animals. So I would recommend anyone watching us considering getting an animal, go to a local shelter.
Go to your dog's home. I'm sure more people used to just go to dogs' homes. And I mean, now, really, seriously, the idea of having a designer dog is all the rage. But there we go. Look, Margarita, thank you very much. Margarita Sachkova there, who is the spokesperson for the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. That's Peter to you and I and most people out there. Yeah, divisive issue. Where do you stand on this? I will go to the inbox shortly, the other side of your headlines. I've got loads more still to come. First, it was Sadiq Khan. Now it's Humza Yousaf. They stand accused of essentially massaging data to try to support their cause when it comes to the environment. Are politicians willing to lie to you about the environment to get what they want? But right now, it's your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon to you. Well, the breaking news that's coming to us in the last hour is that the former nurse Lucy Letby has filed a bid to challenge her conviction at the Court of Appeal. The child serial killer was given a whole life term last month after being found guilty of murdering 7 babies and attempting to kill 6 more. The man killed in a dog attack in Staffordshire yesterday has been named by police as 52-year-old Ian Price. A man has been arrested on suspicion of being in charge of 2 dangerous dogs believed to be American XL bullies. The Prime Minister said today the breed will be banned in the UK by the end of the year. And Sarah Sharif's family have been remanded in custody after being charged with the 10-year-old's murder. Sarah's father, Irfan Sharif, his partner and brother appeared in court today. They've also been charged with causing or allowing the death of a child. More on all those stories by heading to our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Looking at today's markets, the pound will buy you $1.2397, €1.1610. The price of gold is £1,554 and 96 pence an ounce. And the FTSE 100 has closed the day at 7,711 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the finance report on GB News, investments that matter.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McKibben here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Some places will stay damp today, mainly across central parts of the UK. Warm to the south, cool to the far north. We've got a warm front sandwiched in between an area of high pressure to the north and another area towards the south, and an area of rain is persisting along that warm front, edging into southern parts of Scotland. That's the wettest part through the rest of the day. Some parts of southeast Northern Ireland, the far north of England as well. Now to the north, we've got some showers for the north of Scotland, but some bright spells coming through as well. The finest weather is expected across central and southern parts of England and Wales, where temperatures here will reach the mid-20s in lengthy sunny spells. Then into the evening, always the possibility of some thunderstorms turning up across southwestern parts, and we've still got that area of cloud and rain persisting across central and southern Scotland into the far north of England. It does fizzle somewhat into the early hours. Clear and chilly in the far north of Scotland, but a warm night to come in the south, where there's always the potential for some thundery rain first thing, especially across southern and southwestern parts of England and South Wales. That tends to ease off a bit into the afternoon, bright skies for many and another warm day, although it stays cloudy and damp across some of these northern parts of England and southern parts of Scotland, and brighter skies for the far north.
A brighter outlook with Boxed Solar. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
To Scotland now, as Humza Yousaf has been urged to refer himself to a parliamentary watchdog after opposition MSPs say he may have deliberately misled politicians in Holyrood. At First Minister's questions on the 22nd of June, in a response to the question from Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar, Yousaf said Scotland had, quote, the majority of the renewables and natural resources in the UK. Well, the correct figure for 2022 was actually 26%. But hey, look, hey, when have facts mattered, hey? When have they mattered? However, after being challenged by Scottish Tory MSP Liam Kerr, the First Minister wrote a letter on the 29th of August that stated he had intended to say per capita in his original answer. Right, OK, look, there's quite a lot of people out there at the moment who feel as though politicians are becoming increasingly inclined to massage figures, cherry-pick data, even in some cases pay for the kind of data they actually want in order to push a eco-friendly agenda. I can speak now as political commentator and former SNP member Stuart Crawford. Stuart, look, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. What do you make of this, then? Do you think that Humza Yousaf is falling into the category of politician who appears increasingly likely to lie to us about the environment in order to get what they want?
Hello again, Patrick. Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say that Humza Yousaf has lied to the public. I think that we should maybe give him the benefit of the doubt and just say that he was poorly briefed when he came up with the figure of 26%, because it's patently obvious that that is a nonsense figure. I think the mistake that has been made is that rather than say, I got this one wrong and the real figure is whatever it is, he then instructed civil servants who are meant to be impartial in delivering a government programme to find a way of massaging his statement so that he could present it as the truth.
Do you think, look, is there an argument to say that, you know, Humza Yousaf is an absolute grifter?
Well, I think he's inept and incompetent. Right. I don't know if he's clever enough to be a grifter, to be perfectly honest with you, Patrick. I think that he is a rabbit caught in the headlights, the continuity candidate, the one that was picked as a safe option after Nicola Sturgeon was forced to resign, and he's just not up to the job, which I think clearly comes out in this latest parliamentary exchange.
I mean, you know, he wasn't really on top of the facts over Nicola Sturgeon. Whether or not he's made himself on top of the facts of Nicola Sturgeon or has been advised to deliberately not know all of the facts about that will be interesting to see, won't it? Recently, you know, filmed smirking as Scots booed the national anthem, and then he went on that big tirade, didn't he, about all these people in positions of power and authority being white. I mean, it's quite ironic now, given the position that he's in. Is he a bit of a nasty piece of work, do you think?
I think he's just actually a bit pathetic and lacks self-confidence, because I don't think anyone with half an ounce of common sense would commend the booing of the national anthem, whether you like it or not. I think one has to be respectful. And I think the race card is being played far too much by our current First Minister at the moment. In fact, I don't even, one shouldn't really consider race at all. He's a man in a position of power, and he should be judged purely on his competence in filling that post.
Well, let's do that a little bit then. So on this particular issue, supposedly not being on top of his brief about renewables and all of that, I mean, there is a bit of a tendency at the moment. I mean, Sadiq Khan in London stands accused, really, of paying around £800,000 to get a study done that appeared to back up ULEZ, then getting that peer-reviewed by a bloke who reportedly was on the payroll at City Hall as well, and then rolling ULEZ out, people saying that it's actually just a stealth tax, it's not actually really about clean air, which, of course, he completely denies. Is there something going on north of the border there as well, do you think, with Humza Yousaf?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes, the ULEZ in Glasgow has yet to hit the heights of infamy that the programme in London is hitting at the moment. But there is a tendency amongst politicians to seek out the information that suits their case and then present that as the absolute truth, when, of course, the absolute truth is never absolute.
Is it a bit student politics with Humza, do you think? This is what I'm trying to figure out. You know, he's fallen upwards, hasn't he, really? And I just wonder, is it a bit student politics with him?
I think so. I mean, you're absolutely right. He has been unsuccessful, if I can put it that way, in every ministerial appointment that he has had to date. And he has been promoted upwards out of all of them to the position of First Minister, where he was the sort of anointed candidate of Nicola Sturgeon and her cabal. And I don't think he'll be around for too much longer because he's just inept.
It will be interesting to see how much longer. Look, thank you very, very much. It's great to have you on the show. Stuart Crawford, there's a former SNP member just giving his views on Humza Yousaf. Look, plenty more still to come. There's an exclusive GB News People's poll that's revealed 62% of people think that crime in the UK is increasing. Do we need tougher sentences for shoplifters? That's what I want to know. Patrick Christys, GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
You love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Now for our very own GB News crime poll, which has revealed 62% of you think that crime is increasing. Oh, where are the other people? That's what I want to know anyway. 62% of you think crime is increasing. When asked how much confidence they have in the police to deal with crime in Britain, 60% of those surveyed said they either didn't have much confidence or they had no confidence at all. And when they were asked if the police should adopt a zero-tolerance approach to dealing with shoplifters by investigating every single crime, 65% either completely agreed or somewhat agreed. OK, so those are the stats there. I mean, my only shock, I think, is that more people didn't think that crime was increasing. But I'm going to speak now with former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville. Mike, thank you very, very much. What is a zero-tolerance approach to shoplifting? I mean, do we bang them all up?
Well, I think a start would be, Patrick, to arrest them. This all goes back to Theresa May. She reduced the punishment. If it was under £200, then it became a sort of summary-only offence, and you got a sort of equivalent of a parking ticket. And this is why the police sort of backed away from dealing with it. And shoplifters well know that they can steal, lots of £200 in a day. And we're not talking about people here who are desperate for food. These are organised gangs who targeting high-value goods, which then they can then sell very quickly.
I've seen it happen. I was on High Street a couple of months ago, and I was there, and I walked in. I heard an absolute clatter behind me, and someone has just walked, quick as a flash, walked in, open rucksack, swooped a load of cosmetic goods. I mean, good grief, the value of that must have been very, very high. In a rucksack, out the door, off, done. Finished. I mean, no chance of them getting caught, and it just shows you the way that people are at the moment. One of the fears of that, of course, is that they think that the police won't be there to actually catch them, and I think there's some truth to that, isn't there?
Absolutely, and we saw the terrible goings-on in Peckham, where the shopkeeper, rightly or wrongly, tried to stop the woman from stealing, and it ends up in a big old massive demonstration, and where people really feel that they're entitled to steal. So they go into the shop, they've done it 10 times, so then somebody tries to stop them, and then it turns into a robbery because they use violence. And so security guards are at risk, the shopkeepers are at risk, and anybody in the way is at risk. And so it's this entitlement they feel. It is just out of control. And what it does, it leads to almost anarchy, where people feel they can do what they want. And if I can steal from shops, then I can steal from a house or steal from a car.
Absolutely.
It's got to be cracked down on. But starting arresting these people would be a start point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, by the way, Mike, this is not necessarily what you were alluding to, but just to be safe, I want to emphasise that the lady involved in the Peckham incident has not been charged, as far as we're aware, with shoplifting, etc., but that's out the way now. Are people using more violent tactics in shoplifting? Because this is the other thing. People view it as a low-level crime. Sometimes they'll view it as a victimless crime. If someone wanders into a big company like Tesco's, you know, multi-million pound company, and you nick a bit of food. Who's the victim there? But actually, if you wander in and you've got a knife and you wave it in a security guard's face, then there's a victim there. If you go into a corner shop that's not a big corporation and you nick 100 quid's worth of goods, that's impacting them. Should this not be viewed as a low-level crime? And what is the level of violence like now?
Well, as I say, the key thing is that people, what they do is they'll go in with a bag and steal absolutely tons of stuff. And if you keep getting away with things, you just feel that you can do it. And this is where the violence starts. And people start pulling knives. We've had cases where people have been threatened with dirty needles. And it is like you say, it's not a victimless crime because, one, we all pay for it. But if you're a shopkeeper, £100 goes out the shop, that's a day's takings. And if you steal from Tesco's and the like, well, then the prices go up and we all pay for it. And at some point, the police's job is to deal with crime. Now, what surprises me as well is that the Home Secretary, in my view, is sending the right messages. Get on and deal with crime. But some senior officers are seemingly defiant.
But you know what happens? You know what happens, Mike? Sorry to interrupt, but I think you've hit a really important point, which is that if people feel, as 60-odd% of our poll appears to suggest, people feel as though crime is on the rise, and people then don't have the confidence that the police will do anything about it, you do end up with situations like you got in Peckham, which is a shopkeeper feeling like they maybe have to deal with things themselves. And that is when we end up in situations of people getting seriously hurt, when you end up with riots outside, etc. If the public perception is this crime isn't going to get solved by a copper, so I'm going to deal with it myself, people die that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at burglary and the like, the only reason that people report a burglary these days is because they need a crime reference number to go to the insurance. They don't report it in the hope that the police will capture the villain and bring their stuff back. But what I was alluding to earlier, Patrick, is that the noises made by senior police officers. You've got the Essex Chief Constable saying the raid on the Gollywog pub, he would have done it again when there's no charges been made. And you've got the head of the Superintendents Association saying, well, we should be woke and let's all support pride and stuff like that, when they're absolutely in defiance of the Home Secretary. You know, the police used to be filled with army guys like me who, you get your orders and up to a point you do as you're told. Now they seem to be telling the Home Secretary, we completely disagree, we're following a very left liberal agenda, and you can clear off, to be honest. And it's simply not good enough, because I think the Home Secretary is expressing the public mood that more needs to be done about crime.
Yeah, exactly. And with Suella Braverman, she's somebody who was prepared to stand up in the House of Commons and say what's going on the Channel an invasion. She's weathered that storm now. She's somebody who is standing up and saying the police have got to do this, that and the other job. Yeah, and a lot of people that slate her, would you rather have someone who at least comes up and calls a spade, or somebody who, thinks that we should take the knee in front of a load of people? And personally, I know which one I'd rather go for, whether or not she's actually powerless to do all of the things that she wants, because there's an army of civil servants behind her, there's, slow-moving processes, there's managers in the police force and all of that stuff. But I want someone who at least comes out in public and talks a decent game. It would be nice to see a bit more action. But, Mike, thank you very much. We're going to have to leave it there. We are out of time. Always great to chat, mate. Enjoy Gibraltar as well. Just that's where you were. That's Mike Neville there, who's the former Met Police Detective Chief Inspector. Quite a long job title, that, but there we go. Right, Michelle Dewberry is with me in the studio. Michelle Grayson, what do you got coming up on your show?
Hello. Yeah, right, there's a really interesting case that's gone viral on social media. A 12-year-old has been absolutely battered by a fellow pupil. Anyway, The 12-year-old perpetrator now got arrested. Many people saying, hang on a second, there should be no circumstances when a 12-year-old can ever get a criminal record in this country. So I want to look at the age of criminality and ask, do you think a kid should be stuck with a criminal record for life? I do, if you do something wrong, but I want my viewers' take on that. In Scotland, by the way, it's 12. Here, it's 10. I also want to talk about these dog attacks and the fact that XL bullies are banned. Crucially, I've got an expert on there to help me understand, if you do find yourself very unfortunate to be attacked by a dog, what do you actually do? Or if your loved one is being attacked, how on earth do you get those things off you?
Well, I have heard a way, anyway, of getting they say that getting a dog to release its jaw, but it cannot be repeated at this time. Michelle Juby, thank you very, very much.
You tell me in the break.
Oh, well. Choose and Go will be going your way for the next hour. Right, look, thank you very much, everybody who's been watching and listening, not just today, but, of course, over the course of this week. Some top topics there for Michelle. Another one as well with these XL bullies, by the way, is that when a dog attacks another dog, often you go to call the police. Very often the police don't do anything. They say, oh, sorry, it's got to attack a human. Meanwhile, you know, your beloved family pet has been shredded by one of these big things. What do you make of all of that? Thank you very much, everybody, as I've said, for getting in touch. Make sure that you do go back, watch some of the highlights on YouTube. You can always take us with you wherever you go here at GB News by watching online, on YouTube, or crucially as well, on your radio, whether that's in your car or however you consume it. We are everywhere, so make sure that you get on board with that. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and make sure that you stay tuned for Michelle Juby, who will be coming your way for the next hour. Have a lovely weekend, everybody.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again, it's Aidan McKibben here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Another warm day in the south, much cooler further north with some cloud and rain in places, predominantly across parts of southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England because of a stationary warm front which really is continuing to bring a band of cloud and outbreaks of rain. The heaviest rain likely across the southern uplands, the far north of England, parts of southeast Northern Ireland. To the far north, Scotland, we're going to see showers and some clear spells overnight, turning quite chilly here. Much warmer further south and humid with the risk of thundery showers moving up across southwestern parts at times.